everyone, I've just finished the Whole Cake Island arc of One Piece and I am here to talk about it today. It is quite a long arc and I decided not to split this one up into parts, so it's probably going to be quite a long video. Make sure you got your snacks, your lunch, your dinner, whatever you've got, and strap yourselves in because we are going to go through all my thoughts on this whole arc. The Whole Cake Island arc starts off with the Straw Hats entering Toto Land, which is Big Mom's territory, and immediately Luffy does the most Luffy thing possible and eats a poisonous fish. Even with the strengthened immune system that he got from way back in Impel Down when he was fighting against Magellan, this fish's poison is just too strong. So immediately the situation turns into life or death and Chopper is just in chaos trying to figure out how he's going to cure Luffy. Just as Luffy is literally on the brink of death, a ship rocks up that belongs to Germa 66, and pretty quickly I figured out that this was Sanji's siblings because eyebrows. Pretty strong gene in that family. We're introduced to Yonji and Reiju. And honestly, I was not expecting them to look like that. Their designs are super futuristic, especially the suits and the way that their shoes let them levitate and fly through the air. Everything about them looks really high-tech and colorful, which feels very different from the usual pirate aesthetic in One Piece. Reiju ends up saving Luffy by sucking the poison out of him, and her costume design is really cool. I like it. The way that the wings kind of come out and they form these butterfly wings. It's actually really beautiful, but also super creepy because she's draining the poison out of him like some kind of vampire. But the fact that she was helping Luffy and the rest of the Straw Hats because there was some connection to Sanji already made me suspect that she's probably kinder than what she's being made out to look like or what they have alluded to with the siblings. Eventually the Straw Hats end up on an island in Toto Land, and this is where we see some of my favorite aspects of the Whole Cake Island arc, and that's the themes. I just absolutely love the concept of Toto Land where every island is just made up of different ingredients. It honestly looks like it would just be so incredible to explore the different islands. If I had to choose one of the lands to live in, I had to do some research to figure out all the different lands because they didn't really reveal it much in Whole Cake. But if I had to choose somewhere to live if I was a citizen, it would definitely be Cheese Land because cheese, but also Potato Island. I genuinely could live off of potatoes. Just think about everything that you can make with them. You've got mashed potatoes, baked potatoes, hot chips or French fries, wherever you want to call them, crisps, what else? Gratin, you've got gnocchi. And yes, you would have to go to different other islands to get all of the ingredients in order to like make up some of those dishes. But honestly, the possibilities are just endless. Vodka. You've got vodka from potatoes. Anyways, whenever I talk about food, I just get sidetracked, so let's move on. On Cacao Island, where they end up, we're introduced to Charlotte Pudding. And at first, she just seems like the most sweetest, nicest, normal person out there, which we just all know is not the case. The Straw Hats eventually find themselves in the Seducing Woods, where they encounter Charlotte Brûlée and Charlotte Cracker, which is two of Big Mom's many hundreds of children that she apparently has. The whole aspect of the Seducing Woods and even the mirror world, it really reminded me of Alice in Wonderland. It has the same whimsical, dreamlike kind of fantasy feeling where everything is playful and childlike on the surface. But if you dig a bit deeper on the underneath, there is just something creepy and unsettling going on, which does make sense because it is Big Mom's territory. Luffy ends up taking on Cracker while Nami takes on Brûlée. Nami's able to control the homies because of Big Mom's Vivi card that Lola gave her way back in Thriller Bark. I genuinely just don't know how Oda manages to introduce something that will only become relevant hundreds and hundreds of episodes later, but here we are and the Vivi card becomes super important to the story. Now Nami is basically King Bom's new boss. The fight between Luffy and Cracker does also reveal a lot about how strong Big Mom's commanders are. Luffy had literally just come from Dressrosa and defeated Doflamingo, but he is struggling against Cracker. It really enforces that the Yonkos and their crew just operate on a completely different level to what we've seen and to what the Straw Hats have encountered. I do have to say, the funniest part of that fight was when Luffy started eating all the biscuit soldiers and just became gigantic. That being said, I do feel like this part of the arc dragged on a little bit. It was just very long, and I get that it was there to introduce, all of the strength of Big Mom's commanders and to just see what they're really made of and introduce the island as a whole. But I just feel like it could have been a little bit shorter. The next part of the arc dives into Sanji's family and his past. From the beginning, it is crystal clear that Sanji just absolutely despises his family, especially his dad, Judge. During Sanji's fight with Judge, we start seeing flashbacks of his childhood where his brothers constantly bullied him while Judge just let it happen. Watching this made me so mad. His brothers are little brats and are just awful to Sanji when all he wanted to do is cook. Judge himself is also unbelievably ruthless. At one point, he severely injures his own son, and then later he even drives a spear through one of his own soldiers without any hesitation. There's also the scene where they're having a meal together and Niji throws a plate of food at the head chef because he didn't like it. Sanji catches the plate before it hits her and then eats the food off the floor, telling her it was just delicious. That moment actually just perfectly showed the contrast between Sanji and his family's values. Then we learn the truth about Sanji's past. Sanji and his siblings were genetically engineered by their father before they were even born. Judge modified them to develop superhuman abilities and also removed their empathy and fear so that they could become perfect soldiers. We see the siblings go through this intense training as kids while Sanji is constantly falling behind, which is why the brothers bullied him so much. Reiju is the only one who ever showed kindness towards him. Later on, we find out that Sanji's mum was actually taking a drug to counteract the modifications that Judge was putting into her. And then that meant that Sanji actually was born completely human. I really hated the brothers at the start because of the way that they were treating Sanji. But looking back on it now, they were literally engineered to be that way. They were genetically modified to not feel any empathy. So it raises an interesting question where, is it actually their fault? I'm interested to know what you guys think of this. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on the brothers. Either way, the real villain here is definitely Judge. He stripped his children of their humanity and he turned them into weapons. When he discovers that Sanji is defective, he locks him in an underground cell and puts an iron helmet on his head and even announces to everyone that Sanji is dead. Seeing the little Sanji being locked up and constantly beaten was honestly heartbreaking. Someone actually commented on one of my reaction videos in the past saying that whenever Sanji feels scared or he gets sad, he goes to his head to instantly check if his helmet is still there. And once you notice that, it makes his whole past and this whole situation just even more devastating. I really like Reiju. I think that her character is very interesting. I mean, she was born a human, but still has those superhuman modifications that she was provided after she was born. So she has the strength of superhuman powers, but she also has the strength of empathy and the emotions to guide her. And that's exactly why Judge's whole philosophy is completely wrong. Sanji and Reiju, they both prove that empathy is not a weakness, it is actually a strength. Now we get to one of the most difficult scenes for me to watch so far in One Piece. Sanji and the rest of the Vinsmokes are on their way to Big Mom's chateau for the banquet when Luffy and Nami spot him. Naturally, Luffy immediately runs over to Sanji, but instead of talking, Sanji makes the decision to fight him. And the reason why he makes this decision is because he feels like he has no other choice. Zeph and the other chefs are being threatened. Luffy and the rest of his crew are now in serious danger. So in his mind, the only way to protect the people that he cares about is to just completely push them away and to sacrifice himself. For me, what makes this scene just so painful to watch is the fact that Luffy refuses to fight back. He's already battered and bruised from his fight with Cracker and he can barely stand up, but he just lets Sanji keep hitting him. He's not even trying to win this fight. It doesn't even feel like a duel. He just wants to talk to his friend. I was already crying just watching Sanji break down while attacking Luffy because it's really hurting him to do it. But the moment that just really got me is when Luffy stood up while Sanji was riding away and he shouted after him saying, "That has to be one of the most emotionally charged scenes that I've seen from Luffy so far in One Piece. He is not angry at Sanji for what he just did. He's not offended. He hasn't given up on Sanji, not even for a second. He just refuses to believe that Sanji meant everything that he said, and he is still so determined to just get his nakama back to his crew. Moments like this are exactly why I love Luffy as a character. Yes, he is certainly an idiot most of the time, but in moments like these, when it really matters, he shows exactly why he's the captain. And then the fact that Luffy believes in him that much just completely breaks Sanji, and he is just crying, and that whole scene is so heartbreaking, and it's just like, seriously, just I can feel it right now how sad the whole thing is. Just as I thought things couldn't get any worse, we find out Pudding's true colours. When they're at the chateau, Pudding and Sanji spend some time together and share this really lovely moment where Sanji was being very vulnerable talking about his past. The way that Pudding reacted did seem quite overly nice and caring, so I was a little bit suspicious at this point, but I didn't think too much of it. Then Sanji prepares this beautiful basket full of food to bring to her, like a little picnic, and he's so excited and proud of it, which just makes what happens next even worse. When he arrives, he overhears Pudding talking to Reiju, and the things that come out of this woman's mouth are just absolutely vile. She's mocking Sanji's past, laughing about the abuse he went through, and basically treating the whole situation like it's just some kind of joke. Hearing her talk like that, honestly, it made my blood boil. And Sanji just standing there listening to it all, completely shattered, unable to even light his cigarette because his hands are just shaking so much. That moment made this scene just 10 times more painful to watch. At this point, Sanji had already just been through so much, and this was just another emotional gut punch on top of everything that he had already been through. This poor guy has genuinely been through hell. After Sanji left earlier to go to Big Mom's chateau, Luffy and Nami stayed behind exactly where he said that he would be waiting, and they just became fully committed to waiting there. But of course, Big Mom eventually finds that the Straw Hats are on the island, so she sends just this massive number of soldiers along with her own children to capture them. Luffy's determination here is insane. After everything that he had been through, all the hits that he had taken, he was still able to bring down hordes of soldiers. Between him and Nami, it feels like they were able to knock out probably a third of the whole army that went after them. But eventually, the numbers are just too overwhelming, and they end up getting captured and trapped inside of one of Montador's book prisons, which I don't know how to say his name. Montador. You know which one I'm talking about. Luckily though, Jinbei shows up and rescues them. I'm so happy about this because I love Jinbei. And then Luffy just races back to the spot where he told Sanji he'd be waiting. While all of that was happening, Brook and Pedro were on their own little mission trying to retrieve a copy of the poneglyph. And somehow Brook manages to get into the room where the poneglyph is, but then unfortunately gets caught by literally Big Mom herself. And this moment for Brook is actually incredible. He literally stands face to face with one of the 4 emperors of the sea and still decides to fight her. And not only that, he actually manages to hold his own for a little while. His attacks were surprisingly strong, and it was just such a cool moment for his character. During this part, we also learn a bit more about Pedro's past and when he visited Whole Cake Island. Pedro had encountered Big Mom years earlier, and he lost his comrade after being forced to participate in one of Big Mom's ritual roulette games that she plays. To escape, Pedro literally ripped out one of his eyeballs, which is insane, and Big Mom took 50 years of his lifespan. This is one of the most hardcore things I have seen in this arc, and Pedro is just an absolute badass. Then we get into another one of the most emotional scenes in this arc. Sanji finally makes a decision to go find Luffy, and he brings the picnic basket of food that he prepared earlier. Meanwhile, Luffy manages to fight off a few more of Big Mom's children and makes it back to the spot where he promised to wait. At this point, he is basically on the brink of death again. And then this is when Sanji finds him. When Luffy sees this basket of food, he just immediately can recognize that it's all of the Straw Hat's favorite foods. Without hesitation, he just starts eating it and says that it's delicious. This scene really reminded me of something from Sanji's childhood. When he was young, he once brought a plate of food to his mum that honestly looked pretty terrible, but instead of criticizing him, she just ate it and told him that it was delicious. So there's this really wholesome parallel between these two moments. Back then, Sanji was trying to impress someone that he loved, and he finally got the validation that his father never gave him. And now he's doing the same thing again, where he's cooking for someone that he cares about and they're saying that it's delicious. It's such a small moment, but I feel like it just carries a lot of emotional weight and it adds a lot to the relationship between Luffy and Sanji. The scene also reminded me of Robin's I want to live moment, because in the same way that Robin was trying to push away the Straw Hats to protect them, Sanji was also trying to do the same thing. He's hiding what he really wants because he feels like sacrificing himself is the only way, but Luffy is just having none of it. Just like with Robin, he refuses to accept Sanji's answer, and that moment between the two of them is really special. It's another reminder of why Luffy is such a great captain. He really just knows his crew better than anyone else. Now that Sanji has finally rejoined the crew, they regroup and come up with a new plan. They form an alliance with Capone Beiji in order to take down Big Mom, and I have to say, everyone's outfits during this part are actually amazing. These Whole Cake Island infiltration outfits might be some of my favorite in the entire series. And in particular, Nami's, it might honestly be my favorite outfit she's worn so far. This is a point in the arc where everything just descends into chaos, as every other arc does. It's finally the wedding day, and the entire assassination plan is being set into motion. The moment that really kicks everything off is when Pudding lifts up her veil and reveals her third eye. She is just fully expecting Sanji to react in disgust, because that's just how everyone has reacted in her whole life. But Sanji instead tells her that it's beautiful. After everything that Pudding had said about him throughout the whole arc, he still responds with kindness, and I genuinely think that he was being sincere. And even leading up to the wedding, he was trying his hardest to just hold himself together and accept everything that was going on. Which, by the way, the scene where Capone Beiji says that Sanji is an incredible actor, but it's actually that he wasn't acting at all, he was just being himself. That moment was hilarious. But it also showed that Sanji was genuinely trying to make the best of the situation. Then the chaos completely kicks off when Luffy jumps out of the wedding cake with all of his clones, completely destroying it. One of the first big moments is when Jinbei steps in to rescue Luffy from one of Katakuri's mochi attacks. Then he walks right up to Big Mom and calmly declares that he's leaving her crew and joining the Straw Hats, which is already a huge moment. I mean, this has been leading up since Impel Down, literally hundreds of episodes ago when he was introduced. This moment has been leading up since then. But Big Mom responds by saying that if he wants to leave, she's gonna have to take part of his lifespan, and Jinbei basically responds with, as long as the Straw Hats are safe, then she can take his life. The fact that Jinbei is willing to sacrifice himself for the Straw Hats just shows what an incredible character he is. The best part of this whole thing is when Big Mom tries to take his lifespan and it doesn't work, because Jinbei isn't afraid. He has absolutely no fear of dying for the Straw Hats. It is such a powerful moment, and it's easily one of my favorite moments throughout the whole arc. The next big moment is when Brook destroys the portrait of Mother Carmel in such a casual way. Breaking that portrait was a crucial part of the entire plan, because it sends Big Mom into a spiral and an emotional breakdown, and Brook just walks up and just shatters it. Honestly, Brook was an absolute legend in this arc. He faced up against Big Mom. He managed to retrieve a copy of the poneglyph, even though he made it out like he didn't. He broke the portrait that then kicked off the whole plan and made sure that the whole plan was able to go ahead. Then we get another really important moment for Sanji. After everything his family put him through, the abuse, the bullying, everything, Sanji still chooses to go and save them. Earlier in the arc, he told Luffy that he really wanted to do this, and Luffy's response was just, all right, let's do it. And at this moment, it did really stick with me, because even after everything that Judge and his brothers did, Sanji just still couldn't stand the thought of any of them dying. He didn't necessarily want to forgive them, but he also didn't want them to die, and that just shows what kind of person Sanji really is. He has such an incredible heart, and this moment just really showcases how good of a person he is. When we first meet Big Mom in the story, she comes across as just this chaotic, terrifying emperor that loves sweets and then just goes on rampages when she doesn't get the food that she wants. At first, it did seem kind of comedic in a way, but once I learnt about her childhood, that definitely changed the way that I viewed her. When Big Mom, aka Lin, was a kid, she was incredibly strong and it could even rival giants, but she was just completely oblivious to that power and would accidentally hurt people around her by just playing normally. Because of that, her parents eventually abandoned her on Elbaf, which is already a pretty brutal way for her story to start. That's why she ends up meeting Mother Carmel, who is a woman that runs an orphanage called Sheep's House. Mother Carmel takes in children from all different backgrounds and raises them together, and this is basically the first time that Lin ever experiences having a family. What I found most interesting about Lin is that she is not portrayed as malicious. She is genuinely just wanting everyone to live happily, and she's actually very innocent. She even talks about this dream that she has where all races can sit down and enjoy a meal together. There's this moment when some giants insult Mother Carmel and Lin gets so angry that she just completely loses control. She ends up fighting the giant warriors and she causes this massive destruction across Elbaf, which is wild considering that she's like only a kid at this point. After that incident, the giants want nothing to do with her, of course, so she's forced to leave the island with Mother Carmel and the other children. At this point, they're all living a bit of a normal life on this new island and they're celebrating all these holidays, but then comes the moment that I think just completely defines the rest of Lin's life and also how I view her. On her birthday, the other children make her this giant croquembouche tower and Lin just gets so excited she starts eating it immediately and just keeps going and going and going without stopping. While she's eating, she enters one of her hunger pangs, so she just keeps consuming everything around her. When she finally calms down and the hunger pangs are gone, she looks around and everyone has disappeared. The moment itself isn't shown, but it is implied that she ate everything. The croquembouche and the kids and Mother Carmel. It's actually incredibly dark because she didn't even realize what she was doing and what she did. She just assumes that she woke up or she had her croquembouche and then everyone was gone. And that's the story. That's what happened. This moment is what leads her to build Whole Cake Island. She's trying to recreate the happiness and the life that she spent with Mother Carmel and the other children, but she's just doing it in such a distorted way. I'm honestly really conflicted about Big Mom as a character. On one hand, she is completely oblivious to the damages that she causes, so she doesn't fully understand the impact of her actions. But at the same time, the way that she treats people and the way that she rules and the way that she treats her own children, it just makes it difficult to feel any kind of sympathy towards her. Part of me in the moment where she was just going through the emotional spiral just wanted her to remember that she ate everyone so that she can confront the reality of what she did. Because her ego is enormous, she's just basically been untouchable for so long. After the chaos of the wedding, Big Mom eventually snaps out of her emotional spiral and then immediately goes into one of her hunger pangs. And this time she's craving the wedding cake that she was supposed to have at the ceremony, but Luffy completely destroyed. So then Perospero goes into a complete panic, and in order to buy time, he tells Big Mom that the wedding cake is with the Straw Hats. And then of course the Straw Hats are now on the top of her hit list. So now the Straw Hats aren't just trying to escape Big Mum's territory, they're being chased by a Yonko who is in the middle of her full hunger frenzy. No pressure. While the crew is trying to make it back to the Sunny, we get this really great moment for Nami. She realizes that Zeus, who's like Big Mum's big living thundercloud, absolutely loves the weather eggs she uses with her climb attacks, so she basically bribes him with them. Nami manages to take control of Zeus and turns him into this massive storm cloud that unleashes a gigantic lightning attack that literally strikes Big Mum. It was such a cool, big moment for Nami, and she was honestly killing it throughout the whole arc. It was really nice to see her have such a big impact on the progression of the story. And honestly, it did make me think about Robin. If you guys have seen some of my other videos, you know that Robin is my favorite Straw Hat. And while she did have some great moments in Dressrosa, I just wish that she had more moments like this, where it like really impacted the story and progressed it in a way like Nami and Brooke did. Don't get me wrong, I think she had some great moments in Dressrosa, but just seeing what Brooke and Nami did in this arc made me wish that she had more moments like that. Then we get to the next huge emotional moment for the arc with Pedro. Pedro is one of those characters that really understands the seriousness of a situation, and he realized that if nothing changes in that moment, with Big Mum coming after them, Perospero is also coming after them, that the Straw Hats are going to get caught, and if that happened, then their journey is going to end there. Years earlier, Pedro had actually met Goldie Roger, and that meeting just completely changed the way that he saw the world. From that moment on, he believed that someone would eventually appear who could change everything. And by this point in the story, he realized that that person is Luffy. I knew Pedro already had a limited lifespan, but I truly did not expect him to die so quickly and die so soon. I thought that he was going to make it to Wano and he'd have his big moment there, but the sacrifice, it really caught me off guard. He definitely is the legend of Whole Cake Island, and his will carries on through Carrot. Jinbei is another character that stole the show in Whole Cake Island. So you got Nami and Brooke who, you know, made some actions and did some things that really progressed the story. And then there's Pedro, who's just like the ultimate legend because of the sacrifices that he made. Then Jinbei comes in and he is the one that is just continuously rescuing everyone. There's this moment where Big Mum and Perospero are chasing the Thousand Sunny, and one point the crew is facing this absolutely massive wave of juice that is just about to completely engulf the Sunny and wipe everyone out. This is where Jinbei steps in a huge way, and it's probably his first big moment fulfilling his role as the helmsman. He takes control of the ship and expertly navigates them into what's called a green room. This is like a safe current between the waves that allows them to avoid being crushed. This ends up saving everyone's life. I just love Jinbei. He's the best. If I haven't said that enough, he's great. And that's why I was so happy when he said that he's going to join the crew. But then it was even more painful when later on he said that he'll have to join them properly later after helping out his friends. It's like, come on, Oda, can we at least just have one full arc with Jinbei, please? In order to calm down Big Mum, Sanji, Chiffon, and Pudding team up to remake the wedding cake. Sanji basically has to remake and recreate the wedding cake that was supposed to feed the Yonko and everyone at that party, and replicate it exactly how it was, or Big Mum is going to know she's not going to be happy. He is a culinary master to be able to do that. I don't know how he was able to pull it off. On their way to deliver the cake, Oven shows up and is about to attack Chiffon. But then Capone Beiji arrives, and this moment is actually so wholesome. He shows up holding a gun in one hand and his baby, who somehow has a mustache, in the other hand. I have to admit, I just did not like Beiji back in Zor when he shot Pecons, because Pecons was just so happy that his family was saved and he wanted to help the Straw Hats because of this, and the fact that he shot him made me really mad. But throughout Whole Cake Island, he definitely grew on me. and especially with these moments with Chiffon and his family and how he is with them. Beiji has this really interesting mafia-style personality. He's ruthless, and in his past he's betrayed a lot of people to get what he wants. But after meeting Chiffon and having a child, he now has something that he needs to protect, and this is what drives him and what drives his decisions. So I don't necessarily think that he is a completely different person, but I do think that his priorities have changed. Now everything he does it for his family. It was incredibly satisfying seeing him take down Oven, because I really did not like that guy and his massive ego. There's also this really emotional side story happening throughout the arc with Pound. At first it almost feels random and separate, but then we come to learn that he is Lola and Chiffon's dad. He realizes who Chiffon is and tries multiple times to protect her, even though she has no idea who he is. And in the end, he sacrifices himself to help them escape. It's a really devastating moment because he never gets to actually tell her that he is her father, and they never get like a moment where they can reunite. I do wonder if she'll ever find out the truth someday. Maybe if she is reunited with Lola and then she tells her. Another huge moment during the escape is Carrot's Sulong transformation. Up until this point, Carrot has mostly been this energetic, cheerful, slightly naive character traveling with the crew, and we've seen glimpses that she's strong, but nothing that really shows just how powerful she can be. Then the full moon appears and she transforms into her Sulong form. This is probably the coolest visual moments of the whole arc. Her whole appearance changes. Her fur becomes long and flowing. Her eyes just become this sharp, glowing red, and suddenly she has this completely different presence. The design of her is beautiful and elegant, but it's also very intimidating and kind of terrifying. And that's kind of the way that I felt seeing her. It's just like, whoa, she could really take someone down. Then she launches into the sky and absolutely wipes out Big Mom's fleet. Seeing her take down so many ships so quickly was incredibly satisfying, because the Straw Hats were essentially trapped with no way out at this point. And then suddenly Carrot, of all people, comes out and saves them. What also makes this moment actually so much more impactful is the fact that transforming into Sulong is a very dangerous thing for the minks. If they stay in that form for too long, they can lose control and it can completely drain them. It could be a life or death situation. Carrot is literally risking her life to protect everyone. It also connects nicely back to Pedro, because he is the one that's been guiding her and has trained her all this time to allow her to transform into this new form and to be able to control herself. The fight between Luffy and Katakuri was going on for a long time, and for 3/4 of it, Luffy was just getting pummeled. Katakuri was definitely dominating it. But the wild part is that Luffy just kept getting up again and again and again, and he was just determined to defeat Katakuri. In a lot of ways, this fight actually feels like a big milestone in Luffy's growth. Katakuri is insanely powerful, and he has this bounty of over 1 billion berries. His observation haki is so advanced that he can literally see into the future. At this point in the story, this is easily Luffy's toughest opponent yet. I mean, Doflamingo had a bounty of around 300 million berries, which is still very high, but the fact that Katakuri's is in the billion range, he's just on a completely different level. At the start, when Katakuri was introduced, I genuinely thought that he was just some kind of powerful villain that Luffy needs to take down to progress the story. But then the donut scene happened. Seeing Katakuri secretly stuffing his face with these donuts just completely shocked me. I wasn't expecting him to have this softer, more vulnerable side. It humanized him in a way that I just didn't see coming, and after that moment, I just couldn't look at him in the same way. And it made me like his character a lot more. Then there's the moment with his sister, Fanpei, who tries to sabotage the fight by secretly injuring Luffy. And Katakuri immediately shuts that down because he wants the fight to be fair. That moment just really shows his sense of honor. Then later we find out a bit more about Katakuri and his past. Katakuri created this perfect, intimidating image of himself because he just wanted to protect his siblings. He hides his mouth, hides his love for donuts, and forces himself to maintain this flawless persona. Not because of his own pride or ego, it's because he feels like this will keep his family safe. This is why my perception of him changed, because suddenly he's not just this strong enemy anymore, he is now this complex character who really cares about his family. This is what brings us to the end of the fight. Throughout the battle, Luffy slowly improves his observation haki, and little by little he is starting to keep up with Katakuri's sight, like future sight. Eventually he unlocks this really cool Gear 4th Snake Man form, and now Luffy can actually keep up with Katakuri. At this point Luffy is completely exhausted, he's barely standing, and there's just no way that he can continue fighting. Katakuri also looks very heavily injured, but I kind of felt like he had a little bit more fight left in him. Then Luffy declares that he will become the king of pirates, and Katakuri looks at him, smiles, and then falls onto his back. This moment raised a pretty big question for me. Did Luffy truly defeat Katakuri, or did Katakuri choose to accept the defeat? Earlier on in the fight, we learned that Katakuri has never once fallen on his back in the middle of a battle, but here he does it willingly. Maybe he realized that he couldn't win anymore and he wanted to end the fight on his own terms. Or maybe he just respected Luffy. After witnessing Luffy's determination and his refusal to give up and his growth throughout the whole fight, Katakuri may just have acknowledged him as someone who might actually become the Pirate King. In the end, Luffy is declared the winner, but the way that it happened, to me, is still up for interpretation. So what do you guys think? Did Luffy's final attack truly take down Katakuri, or did Katakuri choose to fall out of respect? Let me know what you think. Pudding ended up being one of probably the most interesting characters in this arc. After she betrayed Sanji and said all those awful things about him, I disliked her a lot. But later on, we start to understand why she acts the way that she does. Growing up in Big Mom's family, she was constantly mocked for her third eye. Even her siblings were bullying her and treating her as if she was strange or ugly. So she developed this split personality where she switches between being overly sweet and just incredibly cruel. It's almost like a defense mechanism where she will hurt others before they can hurt her. So when she reveals her third eye at the wedding, she just completely expects that Sanji will look at her in disgust. But Sanji didn't, and he told her that it was beautiful, and I think that this just completely changed her perspective on everything and herself and her life. Throughout the rest of the arc, I was really conflicted about how I felt about her. She's clearly someone that is shaped by a horrible upbringing, so I felt really bad for her. But she also did some really terrible things to Sanji. That's what makes her such a complex character. But she did actually grow on me quite a bit after her revelation with Sanji, when she had those constant conflicts between being smitten with Sanji and then going back to her like evil self. Those moments actually did crack me up quite a bit, so I did start to like her in the end. And the moment where she removed Sanji's memory of their kiss before he leaves is honestly really bittersweet. It shows that she does really care about him, but maybe she feels like she doesn't deserve that kind of love back from him. After the Luffy versus Katakuri fight, Picoms appears and even transforms into his own Sulong form to help rescue Luffy, but it's much harder for him to control, and normally Pedro would be the one to get him out of that state. Even with that help, there are just way too many enemies surrounding them, so Luffy and Sanji are about to be captured when suddenly Germa 66 arrives and basically saves the day. Their transformations are actually so cool. It's like a full superhero entrance. Despite everything that happened in the past, they still came and rescued Sanji. And even though it's, seen as like they are just repaying their debt to Sanji after he saved them. I still feel like it is sort of a way for them to acknowledge Sanji's growth and how strong he's become. I do think a lot of that decision to save Sanji was driven by Reiju, but in the end, Reiju saved Sanji just like she did when they were children. There's also this really poignant moment when Judge confronts Luffy after he was paving a way for them to escape. Judge asks Luffy why he would rescue Sanji when he has all of these traits that Judge considers weaknesses. And Luffy just responds by thanking him for helping them. And then he turns to the crew and asks why Judge was listing all the good things about Sanji. First of all, that moment was just hilarious because of how oblivious Luffy is. Of course he is. But it also highlights just how wrong Judge's philosophy is. Everything that he considers is a weakness, like Sanji's compassion, his kindness, his empathy, is actually Sanji's greatest strengths, like I said before. And these are actually the traits that have helped him find people that truly care about him. Eventually, Big Mom gets to eat the cake that Sanji made after what felt like, I don't know how many, like 50 episodes of her just screaming, "Wedding cake!" Finally, she gets her wedding cake. But while she's eating the wedding cake, she still sends her ship after the Straw Hats. This is when the Sun Pirates step in to help them escape as a final gift for Jinbei, which is actually a really nice moment. Jinbei stays behind to help them escape after getting the go-ahead from Luffy, as long as he promises to rejoin them later. Finally, after everything that they've been through, the Straw Hats escape Whole Cake Island. This whole arc was extremely emotionally driven, and it was intertwined with a few comedic moments, and the themes of fantasy, like the whimsical nature, was really cool. But all in all, those devastating and heartbreaking moments, it truly made me understand Sanji a lot more than I did before, and it made me like him a lot more as a character because I see who he really is. Those are all my thoughts on Whole Cake Island. If you want to see some of my reactions from Whole Cake, please make sure to go check that out there. Put the link up the top. And if you want to go check out all of the other arcs that I've reviewed, make sure to check out the playlist that will pop up on the screen very shortly. I hope that you all have a really great day, night, whatever it is over there. And I'll see you in Wano. Oh my god, I'm so excited to start Wano. I've been looking forward to this arc and it's been a long time coming. So yeah, I'm super excited. I'll see you then. Bye.